All right. Good morning, everyone, to the folks in the United States. Good afternoon to the folks who might be from Brazil joining us, and good evening to those from India. So as always, I encourage you to put a little chat in and let us know where you're calling in from. Some of the names I recognize, some I don't. For those of you who don't recognize me, my name is Mary Conway Datoon. I am the faculty director for the Global Links Initiative. And I am excited beyond words to actually be introducing today's webinar, and just so excited to be in the space with some incredible women who are going to talk about why representative leadership matters. So before we kick it off and you hear from Amie and Alex and the moderation by Cari Coates, I just want to remind everyone a little bit about Global Links, and I want to share with you a new visual that we have for Global Links. So the Global Links Initiative, as you know, is celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. Amazing, right? And I'm so happy to say that we are back in touch with Dr. Amel Abed Muhammad Ali, who joined us as the inaugural scholar in 2011, arrived on campus in 2012. So since then, we've actually been through 4 complete cycles, and we are happy to be inviting our 2021 scholar. Everybody cross your fingers and hope for the best, because we are in COVID time. Things are a little unpredictable, but Maria Elsa Cavalieri, who I believe also just joined the room, will be coming to Rollins and the Crummer Graduate School of Business in August. So fingers crossed. And also, that represents the first phase of the Global Links model. And then Marielsa, like the scholars before her, Dr. Del Boni, Dr. Jacoborti, and Dr. Banerjee, and Dr. Amel, go back to their home country and train a cadre of students who work hand in hand to mentor and advise women around their businesses and the female entrepreneurs. And so the beauty of that is it really enhances and brings to life the vision, not only of Global Links, but also of Crummer and of Rollins, in that we're taking our applied leadership and becoming leaders in our community and impacting the lives of women and strengthening their businesses. So as you can see from our program impact, we've trained over 5,000 students through these 4 completed cycles. And we have talked to over 150 females have been mentored. And I'm so happy to say that in these webinars alone, we've touched over 150,000. So that's some wonderful reach. Anyone wants some more information about how to become a partner, I'm really, of course, happy to discuss that. But let's get to the real reason that we're here today, and let me introduce Cari Coates, who's going to moderate our conversation. Cari, as always, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming here. We're not ready for the Q&A yet. So Cari and I have known each other, I think 14 or 15 years now, Cari. And of course, that relationship started at the Crummer Graduate School of Business, but Cari has been active leader in the Orlando community way before then, starting with her work with the Magic. And I will share personally, because you know at the Global Links, we're all about connections and relationships, that Cari has been and continues to be a mentor for me, and is really just a guide in talking about and thinking about women's leadership and how to lead yourself and other organizations. Cari left Crummer a couple years ago to start her own business. So she is really a serial entrepreneur, very much understands the entrepreneurial landscape. And she is partnering, CEO and founder of an organization called Accendo Leadership. So I could say so much more about Cari. Anyone who's here in Orlando knows Cari. So I'm going to cut it short there so that, Cari, you can go ahead and introduce our speakers, Amie and Alex, and get us started on the conversation. But thank you so much for joining us today, Cari. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can see everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Conway de Toan. And I have to say, we have a mutual reciprocal mentoring relationship. When I first came to Crummer and throughout my tenure there, Mary was crucial for my learning of academia and higher ed. So we had a great time. And Mary, I am thrilled to see the work that Global Links has done. I cannot believe the impact and the breadth of all the work that's been done. I remember when it was born, it was a baby. And wow, you guys have done so much. So I'm just really honored to be asked to be part of this and to see everybody. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our two panelists today. Amie Dugan is someone, Mary and I've known each other 14 or 15 years. Amie Dugan and I have probably known each other 25 or 28 years. Amie is the Vice President of Organizational Development for Special Olympics North America. And for those of you that are not familiar with Special Olympics, I'll let Amie share kind of their mission, but suffice it to say it is one of the premier nonprofits, both in the US and globally, working with developmentally disabled individuals. Amie, as I said, is the Vice President of Organizational Development. Her impact with Special Olympics, she has been with them for 27 years. And so her impact has spanned everything from what she does today in terms of impacting organizations, to leadership development, to marketing, to diversity, equity, and inclusion. She has experience ranging from grassroots to international in her time with Special Olympics. She's even been inducted into the Special Olympics Hall of Fame, which is a big deal. Amie, most notably, got her undergraduate and graduate degree from Rollins. So she's an alum. She is also a board source certified nonprofit consultant and is currently an instructor in the Edith Bush Institute for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership at Rollins. So welcome, Amie. I look forward to sharing. If we had a dais, I would look forward to sharing that with you today. The virtual dais, I guess. All right, our second panelist is Alex Manrique. Alex is the manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Universal Parks and Resorts. She's been at Universal since 2008, and she currently oversees 7 team member resource groups at Universal. I love this quote that Alex embraces, and I think it's really appropriate for our topic today. Diversity is a state of being. Inclusion is what we do with it. Diversity is a state of being. Inclusion is what we do with it. Alex is very active in the community, to a long list of organizations that she's in leadership with. She holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Central Florida and an MBA from Rollins, from Crummer. And she currently serves on the Crummer Alumni Board and is the incoming chair of the Alumni Board. So welcome, Alex. Okay, let's get our questioning started. And I think as Mary said earlier, if you do have questions, you can log them into the chat. We will save some time at the end for Q&A. But I want to kind of ask this question to both of our panelists. So the title of this webinar is Why Representative Leadership Matters. So before we kind of dive more deeply into some specific issues surrounding the topic, why, in your opinion, is it important that organizations and decision makers prioritize representative, diverse, and inclusive leadership? Amie?
Cari,
Go ahead, Alex, after you.
I was just going to share, it's a perfect segue, Cari, because you just shared diversity is a state of being, inclusion is what we do with it. So absolutely, diversity, think of diversity as this, and inclusion and equity and belonging is doing this. So making sure that we come together, because we see many quotes on the internet. Recently, I saw a new version of that quote where they say diversity is where everyone is invited to the party. Equity means that everyone gets to contribute to the playlist. to the music choice, the song choice. And then inclusion means that everyone has the opportunity to dance. So in the end, we all just want to feel included and that we belong, right? So it's not only the right thing to do, but also makes good business sense to have an organization and its leadership that is as diverse as the customers or the guests that in our case we serve. So inclusive leadership enables diverse perspectives to be heard, to be respected. And then those good ideas become great ideas. And then these great ideas are then implemented and positively impact the business. So when making business decisions, it's critical to have diverse perspectives to, of course, enhance the collective power of teams and therefore be able to better support the organization's ability to innovate and grow. So as we know, in a global society that we live in, people like to do business with people who look like them, who they have a connection with, or who they trust. So that's why it's very important to have representative, diverse, and inclusive leadership.
Wow. Thank you so much, Alex. Amie, what would you add to that?
I would, building on Alex's great points, I would add that because in companies and organizations, institutions and communities, composition is an expression of our values. And events around the world over the past year, at minimum, have further elevated and underscored this recurring conversation that is by no means new, but has for far too long received a lot of lip service, but often insufficient commitment from organizations, which is a deliberate and authentic commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, now more than ever, arguably, there is a tremendous need for the diversity of perspectives and lived experiences and thinking that can only come from a non-homogeneous group of leaders. And I would encourage organizations to go a step further than just thinking about the traditional kinds of diversity that typically and most immediately come to mind: gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, et cetera, but to also be really strategically seeking individuals who represent an array of expertise, leadership styles, thinking styles, and backgrounds that are going to help meet the current and future needs of the organization, to ensure that you have dynamism as well as diversity. And then, of course, ensure everyone has equal access to opportunities to meaningfully contribute and lead. So this confluence of global economic, political, public health, and societal issues certainly gives us a lot to think about. But if organizations forestall honest conversation and action any longer, it's going to be really difficult for them to emerge and remain relevant, respective, and competitive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Amie, I think especially for our global audience, talk about Special Olympics, because you are on the front lines of diversity in a way that oftentimes we don't even think about, and that's diversity with people with disabilities.
Right. So if you've got an extra hour, I can talk about Special Olympics alone for that amount, as you know. So I'll try to put it in a nutshell, but I never assume people know what our work is. So Special Olympics is a global organization. It's a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1968 by a pretty extraordinary woman herself, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who is the sister of President John F. Kennedy. And what we do is we provide year-round sports and training and athletic competition, as well as fitness, health, education, early childhood intervention, leadership programming for children and adults who've been diagnosed with intellectual disability of all ages, and essentially giving them continuing opportunities to develop not just fitness, but confidence and skills to be successful on the playing field and in life. And we are currently in 194 countries around the world, and we are made possible by more than 1.2 million volunteers. And while the numbers vary by nation, globally, the approximate percentage of all of our participants who are females, which is in keeping with the global prevalence rates of males versus females diagnosed with intellectual disability, is about 40%. So 40% of our participants are girls and women. And intellectual disability doesn't discriminate. Anyone can have a child, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a colleague with intellectual disability. So our work really does touch all people. So diversity, equity, inclusion has been, for all of our 53 years of existence, the cornerstone of our mission of empowering people with intellectual disabilities and creating more respectful, equitable, and inclusive communities for everyone. So we use the ubiquity and the joy and the fun and the power of sport as the catalyst for increased empowerment, human rights, and social equity. And I'll just give a shameless plug that if you don't know about Special Olympics but would like to learn more where you live, it's just specialolympics.org.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Amie. So I'd like to kind of turn the conversation and focus more on women. Obviously, we have women here on the call, and so while we've made tremendous progress over the years, we still have a long way to go. Out there in the world, globally, the proportion of women in senior management is only 29%, and this number is even lower for women of color. So I'd like to ask each of you, why do you believe women continue to be underrepresented in leadership roles? Amie, you want to start this time?
Sure, I'll kick it off.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reasons can be many, whether they're institutional, whether they're cultural. However, I think there's also this element of a constructed or real notion of scarcity, that there's this finite number of positions or seats at the table for women, and we should accept or be contented with or be grateful for the quota we get. And that scarcity of myth, or in many cases that reality, can create a competitive versus collaborative dynamic between women, which can be really harmful and self-defeating. It slows progress towards our larger shared goal of equity for women and non-dominant groups. So the reality, I think, is that there's room for everyone. It's more about having a yes and mindset than an either or mindset. To retain control, the dominant group would probably prefer equity be an evolution. I'm going to say that I think women probably want a revolution at this juncture on this topic. So women, especially women of color, routinely find themselves at this nexus of institutionalized discrimination or diminishment, implicit, sometimes overt biases, and increasingly outmoded, but still very powerful and active societal and corporate constructs that can get in the way. So I would add, I think the last thing we need to add to that list is friendly fire from other women. So my advice would be, if you reach a position where you can hire, promote, and support other talented women, do it.
Alex.
Thank you. I'll add to what Amie shared. When I was thinking about this question, I pulled up a list of Standards & Poor's 500 from a recent list, and there's a little bit over 30 women on the list. And surprisingly, I found a lot of statistics and data, and very few of them are women of color. So that was very surprising to see. And we know that there's room for improvement, and we have made great strides in the workplace. But it was just very interesting to find out that even though female leaders attend elite schools and have bolster their education credentials, they were less likely to chair in their company's boards. And their CEO tenures had a lower pay range, which I found on this article. And also companies led by women are smaller companies, younger companies, and the profits earned are smaller, and the smaller investor returns are also prevalent. So it's just interesting to see how, yes, we have the opportunity to have females in these roles. And we continue to see on the list bigger organizations welcome female CEOs, but I agree that there's room for improvement and continue that. There's also, of course, social factors that we should talk about because women perform sometimes more family duties than men, or maternity leave and absence to care for children or others. Yet we know that that's continuing to change in the workplace with parental leave and others. So a better approach is simply making sure that women have the same opportunities to develop as men. We know that workplaces that mentor female leaders and provide a better work-life balance, like family paid leave, are more likely to retain and attract these women in managerial roles. So companies should also focus on preventing biases and stereotypes and favoritism. We know that's discouraging. And more broadly, society needs to ensure that women are given these opportunities. So, of course, have as an organization a deliberate and strategic intentional strategic plan where you focus on a talent pipeline, because you want to ensure that you already have a talent pipeline created and developed, where you have diverse talent at all levels of the organization. That way, when you have an opening, you already have a candidate in place. And then you want to provide stretch programs and carve pathways to high potential talent, regardless, women of all types, right, of diverse talent, and make sure to include all aspects of diversity, which is what Amie had mentioned. So once you have diverse leadership, you ensure you have the succession planning, and you continuously go through that talent review process. So you have mentorship programs, you engage and promote, and you can inspire women to create their own paths and hopefully have less challenges than what we've been seeing in the past.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question women are largely responsible for the unpaid work out there, right? And I recently was reading some articles about the impact the pandemic has had on women, because now children have been home, we've been homeschooling, so all of the unpaid work has risen exponentially. And I heard a statistic that really stopped me in my tracks, that the percentage of women in the labor force in the United States is at a all-time low, 33-year low is the percentage of women in the workforce right now. And 1 in 4 women are considering either downsizing, so going part-time, less work, or even leaving the workforce altogether. And so that's the impact. So you talk about, we have made progress, but we have to make sure that we don't regress, I think, globally as a result of the pandemic and the hurdle, the exponential rise of that unpaid work factor, which continues to largely fall on women.
Cari, to that point, if I may add, there was an article similar to that said of the individuals who left the workforce during the pandemic, 80% were women. And because there's a perception that people who work remote from the home are not as productive of people in the office. Usually men go back into the office and women stay remote. There's a perception, which actually studies have showed, that people who are home are more productive than those in the office. But because that is happening, leaders in the organization see men in the office and believe that they're more productive. So that might actually be something to look into, preventing men from getting more raises and also continuing to increase that wage gap disparity that already exists.
Yeah, great, excellent points. Really, I think we have a lot of work to do here as the pandemic, hopefully, as it gets in the rearview mirror here in the coming months. So I'm curious, here's kind of a more individual question. It's a 2-part question for each of you. As a female leader, what has been the most significant barrier that you have personally experienced? And then the second part to that, has there ever been a time when being a female leader was an advantage? Alex, you want to start?
Amie, were you ready? Or
did you want go ahead. It's the Zoom delay.
Thank you. I think the most significant barrier for my career in my case would be myself. I just think that through the years, looking back and thinking about this question, not being able to feel comfortable with myself or feeling uncomfortable with self-promoting in the past and sharing about my professional brand, my career, my value, and my achievements and accomplishments, I think that I'm learning, but I wish and hope that somebody would have said that before, earlier in my career, because of course there's a whole kind of data and metrics and statistics that says that women only feel qualified to do a job once they're 100% qualified, and it's not the same for men. So men will go for a role and not have all the requirements or qualifications, and women feel like they have to have all of them in order to apply for a position. And so I read something the other day, which I thought was so interesting in terms of self-promotion and personal brand and professional brand in your career. It said, the strong performance is like a powerful Maserati, but the ability to self-promote is like having gas in the tank. So I thought that was very interesting because looking back, I wish I would have gone through other professional opportunities, asking for promotions, negotiate salaries, all of those, which sometimes are very common for others in the workplace. So I think I would look into sharing and publicizing wins, self wins, in the company or outside on social media when appropriate. Take risks, of course, and know that you're ready. If you don't have all of the requirements, of course, you can then take some courses and learn more, and certificates, of course, with the current online and virtual development of webinars and sessions, you're able to learn faster and in a more convenient way, and then sponsor each other's success and make sure that we are using our experience to promote other women's experience and accomplishments. So advocate for other people and expose them to opportunities. So let's say that you attend a meeting that this other woman would not be able to attend, invite her and make her a part of the conversation and expose her and build awareness of her accomplishments so that we can all help each other grow. So that was the first part of the question. Did you want me to
the second
let
part
Amie?
Well, why don't you answer? Has being a female ever been an advantage?
I think when I read this question, I feel inclined to switch the script. I don't think that it's about female leadership. It's about diverse leadership, which applies to all of us. So all of us, we have our own diverse perspectives and we have our strengths and skills, and taking advantage and benefiting from those to impact our role in our organization. So I wouldn't really put it as a female advantage. I know that a senior leader that I know, that I respect very much, once said that it's not a gender, it's not a female thing. It is a leadership thing.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Amie, how about your journey? What hurdle have you experienced, and has being a female leader ever been an advantage?
Yeah, so for the first part, I could almost say ditto to Alex's response. And I bet a lot of the women listening in and joining us today might have experienced this. Very similar to Alex. I think early on, I placed too much faith in leaders that if I worked really hard and I did great work, it would be recognized and rewarded with advancement or opportunities. I've never been comfortable drawing attention to myself. It's not in my nature. So I had to learn how to make my value known, both through my work and other means that were authentic to who I am and that I was comfortable with. I would say also early in my career, in my naivete, I didn't fully appreciate, and maybe it was a protective gift, but I didn't really fully appreciate just how pervasive, condoned the bias against women was and still is. We have to navigate microaggressions on a regular basis. I think it's our superpower that we learn how to do that in time. So I agree with Alex. I think it's in part about learning day-to-day strategies to help you authorize and validate your own voice, your talent, your worth in the business world, and things like how to constructively and clearly reclaim your idea or your contribution in a meeting or on a project. I'm sure that's never happened to anyone where you've said something and 2 minutes later someone else in the room says it and it's brilliant. So what are the strategies for how you reclaim that in a way that is constructive and honors your worth and your contributions? For your second question, Cari, about when was being a female leader advantage, I think Alex's point is spot on. But if I were to focus through the lens of what women bring to leadership, while a specific moment doesn't come to mind, I do think one of the upsides of girls and women being conditioned often to place others before themselves is that female leaders tend to really shine when the situation calls for or benefits from having a higher degree of emotional intelligence. When empathy and patience can get something to a place of success that more direct or maybe less nuanced approaches could potentially derail. And then I would just say an ongoing strength of women is we get things done. We know how to get things done. I'd use another word, but.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on the strengths of women. There's a Korn Ferry study that I read recently, and they break emotional intelligence down into like 13 categories, and women outperform men in 12 of the 13. And these are all attributes well known to be attributes of successful leadership. And I do a lot of work with women leaders, women leaders who are emerging, who are in middle management. And it's so interesting that both of you brought to the group this idea of, gosh, I didn't want to raise my hand early on. I felt like I was self-promoting. I had to learn how to professionally comment and, own my voice. And those are two huge topics, well known to be hurdles for women. Kind of this idea of confidence, and perfection, and having to be 100% qualified before I raise my hand. And then also this idea of bringing my voice. And when you look at studies on that, it's both hormonal, meaning the way testosterone manifests itself in behavior and the way estrogen manifests itself in behavior are very different. So it comes very naturally to men. It does not come naturally to women. And then there's also the societal factors, right? Of growing up and being the perfect little girl in the classroom, because we can be, when the little boy next to you, because he's got all this testosterone flowing through his body, fidgets, and he can't be, right? So that's fascinating to me that both of you brought that, but it's very, very common, very, very common. So here's a question about kind of this idea of meritocracy, right, in the workplace. How do you respond or react to the comment from those who claim, well, we simply hire or promote the best person for the job, regardless of race or gender or any of the other things that we should be taking into consideration? Amie, how do you respond to that?
You should hire the best person as a business, but the implicit biases of hiring managers and hiring practices often keep qualified women and other underrepresented voices from even being in the running for consideration. I know many of us know that there's mountains of research that confirms that hiring people just to check the box is not only tokenism, but it doesn't yield a meaningful outcome for the individual or the organization. I think people see through it when an unqualified individual is placed in a position of leadership solely to check that box and they aren't competent or effective in the role. And it only serves to further reinforce people's fears, skepticism, resistance to embracing difference. And not seeing any or many people who look like you or think like you in positions of leadership will only encourage smart, talented people to seek other opportunities where they will be valued.
Yeah, there's real power in the mirror, isn't there? And when you don't see someone like you, in leadership, that can definitely be very demotivating. Alex, how do you respond to this idea of we hired the best person,
I'll kind of go back to what Amie said. It's ditto Amie, because when I see this, I hear this, I feel I react positively, but only if we make sure that we have a diverse slate of candidates. So of course, we should simply be hiring the best fit talent, the right person. But we want to make sure that as an organization, we have a diverse pipeline already in place, so that when you have an opening, you have a position in a role, you have a slate of candidates that hopefully is diverse. And then absolutely, then you will hire the best fit talent for that specific role, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, or any other dimension of diversity.
I guess, how do you overcome, however, our own biases? So if say, for example, it's largely male in charge and leadership in a hiring role, you have a diverse pool of candidates, but it's well known that our own biases are that we hire and like and convince ourselves. And there's been lots of studies where they blind name, resumes, etc. We want to hire somebody that's just like us.
I think we have to be cautious in terms of debiasing the hiring process. What you mentioned, Cari, is something that many organizations do practice, which is sometimes not including information such as the school, the name, the address or the residence of the candidate, so that does not create some unconscious or conscious bias in the hiring managers. So that's an important step. But I think that we also need to look into making sure that the hiring process is not dependent on one person. It should be a couple of individuals in the organizations at different levels with different perspectives. And we should also make sure that the questions that we utilize are all the same questions to make it fair and equitable. So whatever questions we're asking one candidate, we should ask all candidates.
Those are some really very helpful best practices. Thank you. So Amie, this question is for you. So based on your expertise in organizational development, what would you say is the most difficult part of implementing a diversity, equity, and inclusion programs? And what communication tools can a leader use to overcome some of those challenges?
I think the first step, like a lot of things, is just selling it in, demonstrating the business case in actuality, not just in theory. That diversity, equity, and inclusion produces a demonstrable competitive advantage. Because when it's not authentic to an organization's culture, when it's forced, because a company wants to look like they're committed to a diverse and inclusive environment, when in actuality they're just engaging in some symbolic gestures, it's an uphill battle. And not having authentic buy-in and commitment from the top down makes it exponentially more difficult to drive it from other levels of the organization. And as we said earlier, when it's superficial, people see through it, they disengage. So in short, leaders and companies need to walk the talk. And I think the tools and actions for a leader are pretty straightforward. Create a safe space to talk about it and to learn more and to possibly make missteps, then model it, act on it, and stick with it. It's really in keeping with the core tenets of organizational excellence. It's about people, processes, strategy, sustainability, and culture. It's, DE&I isn't a one and done endeavor. It's a journey. And a variation on Alex's great quote is similar. Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an act, and belonging is an outcome. So if it isn't embedded in our values and organizational culture, it will be reduced or risks being reduced to something that produces no meaningful behavioral change. And I think that's what leaders need to be communicating, that success is authentic when attitudinal and behavioral change is normalized and simply a part of the company's culture.
Yeah, well said. Alex, are there anything you would add to that, or any other best practices that you can share with our group?
Sure. With organizations, I think the first step is to analyze and really look at your diversity landscape, the current state of your organization, and identify opportunities for growth and improvement. So I know that a recent article stated that companies that increase diversity, equity, and inclusion have higher profit margins. So we know that, it's not just a nice thing to do, it makes good business sense. And a Harvard Business Review study found that companies above average total diversity have 19% higher innovation revenues and 19 points higher of EBIT margins on average. So the numbers are there, right? It is not only the right thing to do. So some best practices that organizations can look at are employee resource groups or affinity groups. So groups that focus on bringing employees or team members together to make sure that there's a shared space where people learn about their similarities and not their differences, to really promote and elevate and impact diverse perspectives, whatever that is, right? So we do that through resource groups or affinity groups, through ERGs. We also have an opportunity as an organization to have an executive inclusion council where the most senior leaders in the organization come together to review and to listen, to see what the education is, the programs in the company, the outreach, and make sure that they're helping elevate that. And then, of course, you want to make sure that the senior leaders in teams such as the HR team, the legal team, the communications, government relations, and community relations everyone comes together to look at how they can collaborate and make sure that the organization continues to be an employer of choice. So what can they do to partner? I think, ideas that I would share with other companies is to continue to look into connecting with a community through either multicultural chambers of commerce or diverse professional associations and HBCUs and HSI. So HBCUs are historically Black colleges and universities, and the HSIs are the Hispanic serving institutions. And those partnerships will help the company not only enhance that employer of choice position, but also help the relationships when there's a need for the diverse talent to be there. And so that's something that's very important, to partner with a talent acquisition team to make sure that we're bringing this diverse pipeline of candidates ongoing, and you build relationships. You just not go looking for the candidate once the role is open. You have that already in place. And also that you partner with your purchasing, your procurement teams to make sure that you're looking into minority supplier diversity, and looking at minority vendors in the community to be able to be a good supporter of the community that you are in as an organization.
Yeah, wonderful. Very, very helpful. Thank you. And I just want to remind our audience to please log in any questions that you might have, because I'm going to ask our panelists one final question, and then we're going to open it up to everyone that is viewing. So here's kind of the final question. We've talked a lot about challenges. We have discussed some solutions, but I'm sure there's still a lot left that you guys could share. So is there, if in one sentence or a couple of sentences, is there one tool or one tip or one thing that when you think of your journey that you would share with the audience that helped you, that you can give to the audience as we finish our panel today? Amie?
Yeah, I'll give you two. I don't know if I can do one. I don't know if I have one brilliant bumper sticker that boils it all down, but I'll give you a couple of thoughts that I would share from my own experience. That you are powerful in your own right, so honor and own that. And my best tip is surround yourself with incredible women who will mentor, support, celebrate, and inspire you.
Okay, well, and I'll do, I think those were wonderful, Amie, and I'll add three more. Sorry, I can't do just one, but
it's okay.
Of a long list I would share to be able to really watch, manage, and take care of your personal brand, because the way you carry yourself, you present yourself, the way people perceive you is very important in your career. Be prepared, always be prepared, and do your homework. So make sure that you prepare in advance, have your ideas, your thoughts together for any interaction, any meeting, or any presentation, and build relationships. So important, make sure that you build and you foster those relationships through the years, and have a diverse network of colleagues and people that you trust and you keep in touch.
Yeah, well said, ladies. Thank you. I mean, it's well known, two things that women, in large part, don't do well. We don't build a network. And so we keep our heads down and we get the work done, right? We don't look up and build a network. A network can be a huge source of power and support. And we're not really good at kind of identifying mentors and finding people who can help us skill up and share their experience, et cetera. So thank you so much for that advice, and for all of your comments today. And I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Yasmin, who is going to help us navigate any questions from the audience.
I think I'm doing the questions. Is that right, Yasmin? Well, let me go ahead and do them.
Okay,
Is that-
Mary.
is that
Mary's
okay?
yeah.
I'm just so excited. I can't control myself. Sorry. Yes means used to that. So, and you know, the thing that as I listened to you about that network and that support group, and looking at Yasmin and looking at Ilea, and I can recognize some of the names on our Zoom, knowing that who are scholars and who are entrepreneurs and who are our students, is that we can find mentors in younger folks as well. Sometimes we always think that the mentor has to be someone who's older or more experienced or something like that, but I am constantly mentored and educated and motivated by the students that I have the opportunity to work with. So, and speaking of that, Cari, we've got a couple questions. So, the first question came from something that was said. You gave some statistics of women leaving the workforce. And so the question came, does that statistic or that phenomenon, do you think, Amie, Alex, and Cari, do you think that that creates an opportunity for women to increase participation in the entrepreneurial sector of the different economies that we have online?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I'm a huge believer in there's silver linings in everything, right? You know, if you look to the left, the hurricane is blowing this way, but if you look to the right, the sun is coming up, right? And so I think that's a wonderful, insightful question. And I think the answer to that is yes. And having worked with a lot of women entrepreneurs, one of the reasons why they decide to start their own company is unrest in the jobs they have, or they need the flexibility that being their own, having their own business will provide, for all the reasons we've already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Alex and Amie, anything you would add to that?
I'll agree. I'll add that I think that there's a silver lining to everything. So I absolutely agree on that. And last year, I think, was the great awakening for our world and humanity amidst a pandemic and so many losses of life for many reasons. I think we stopped to really think, and as human beings, it's important, and especially women, I think we're always go, 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 and we have been for so many years, to just really stop and think, what are we passionate about? And what are our skills and talents? Might be a good opportunity if you were in the situation where you were no longer with your previous employer and that's what you had been doing for your, maybe this is a time to really sit and think, okay, what am I passionate about and what would I like to do as an entrepreneur? So sometimes it's a little bit of a forced, life kind of forces you and puts you in that position, but I think that we should look at the positive of that.
Yeah, great point. Amie, anything you would add?
Alex said my point beautifully, so I'll try to just build on that to say I do agree that this has been such a time to reimagine and reframe how we view our professional lives, our personal lives, our opportunities. And that great point Alex raised of, you couple Alex's earlier point about preparing yourself, having the confidence because you have that background, whether that's a certification in something, ongoing education, and pairing it with your idea of a mentor network to help you upskill. When you put all those together, it does put us in that growth mindset of saying, that's my passion, and embracing the idea of the power of yet. I'm not there now, I'm just not there yet. And that, I think, is a very liberating way to give yourself the bandwidth to have a more entrepreneurial mindset about any aspect of your life.
Yeah, great insight. Thank you.
Great, thanks. We have some questions that are coming. As you know, we have audience from India and audience from Brazil. And so our first question comes from Brazil. It says, I'd like to know if in the more developed countries or markets, you face something that we feel a lot in the Latin countries, which is women in leading positions are often more competitive to other women than they are to men. Do you see that? And what might you say that could help women to deal with that situation?
I'll let Amie or Alex respond to that.
I'll echo a little bit what I mentioned earlier about this idea of scarcity, and that the last thing we need is women being competitive with other women. But when there is this notion that there are only 2 or 3 seats at the table for women, because that's what's been allotted to us or given us, it does create an unhealthy dynamic between women, which is unfortunate for advancing the broader goals. So does it happen in developing nations? You bet. You bet. It does, and it's unfortunate. It doesn't. Unfortunately, it seems to be a universal thing. So, I think with the way we do that is to make the commitment to ourselves and other women leaders that we will celebrate each other's success, that we will turn around and point. We were just Cari and I were talking about a book by a very famous U.S. gold medal winning Olympian recently, who wrote a book, and it's about, when she would score a goal, she would turn around and point to all the other women on the team, all the people on the bench, because that's who makes it happen, is all of us. It's everyone's win, not just an individual effort. So I think it's turning around and pointing to the other women when we have our victories.
I'll echo what Amie shared. I think that that does happen sometimes, but I think it's unnecessary, because as more women come into the workplace, they're being trailblazers and opening the path for more women to become a part of leadership in organizations. And we should, on the contrary, try to help each other, making sure that we're coaching each other, we're advocating for each other, we're celebrating each other. I know that the Obama administration, or the women in the Obama administration, were known for the amplifying. So what Amie shared, like someone says and shares an idea, and nobody heard it until a man 10 minutes later shares it. So women would amplify each other to make sure that that did not happen. When there was a great idea, or there was a question, or there was a comment, they would go back to the woman and say, well, you shared this, or you thought this, can you share more? So just continuing to do that every day, making sure that through the small everyday practices that we build each other and we foster those relationships.
Yeah, no question. I think of it as, I call it leading forward, right? If women that are emerging, that are climbing the ladder, can work on the building blocks of their leadership, develop their confidence, learn how to communicate with power and authority, how to have presence and to push. And the women who are accomplished on the other end of the spectrum can reach back and do all the things you guys have described: mentor, sponsor, advocate, also challenge women. We can accelerate closing the leadership gap. You've got them pushing here, and you've got women leaning in here, and we can accelerate closing the leadership gap. And so if you're in a situation where you have women who are overly competitive because they only think there's 2 spots at the table for women and they want one of them, go find the women who are not, because there are plenty of women out there who are going to be on your team. There are plenty of women out there that are going to be on your team, and just go surround yourself with them.
Wow, great. And we have a question sort of similar from India, and says shyness is sometimes considered a must-have for women leaders in India. So how do you suggest a woman remains modest, yet clearly draws attentions, leads with her competencies?
Alex or Amie, either one of you have any comments on that?
I touched on this a little bit earlier, so I'll yield to Alex if she has thoughts, or back to you, Cari.
I think that adding that, of course, culture is an important component in our organization, yet making sure that you are not then doing your career and your skills and your talent a disservice by trying to accommodate to what the culture is. So absolutely being respectful, but continuing to learn how to be assertive, to find your seat at the table, to do your homework, to an example would be a meeting is get to the meeting early, make sure that you're able to speak and to network with others, even if it's a virtual meeting, right? When we were in physical meetings, it was important to come in and make sure that you had a seat at the table where you felt comfortable and you were not just at one end or in a corner, that you had a prominent place where you felt like you were a part of the dialogue and that your ideas would be heard, but also sit in a power position during the meeting, even if it's virtual, make sure that your camera is on, that your voice is heard, and use an assertive tone, because we know that the few women who are in the room get noticed faster. But of course, then once they're noticed, performance is critical. So making sure that you then follow up with your performance.
Yeah, two things I would add to that is find your authentic voice. I think oftentimes women fall into this trap that they have to act like the man. And if that's their authenticity, fine, but find your authentic style and your authentic voice. There's lots of examples out there of successful leaders who come in all shapes and sizes and genders and styles. Find some that are more reflective of your style. Become a student of how they speak up, what their, what their professionalism is, what their presence is, if that's more in line with your style, and then begin to practice. Find a buddy in the meeting and I'm going to let Alex know that I'm really working on this, Alex. So, I'd love for you to pay attention. Give me some feedback when the meeting's over, because I'm going to try some things. Some things are going to work. Some things are not going to work. Learn from that. And the next time you're in a meeting, try some new things. So find people who model the style and behavior that you think could be authentic to you, and then begin to practice.
I love that. Cari, from my martial arts experience, we used to say, practice doesn't make perfect, but practice leads to improvement. And so the more you practice something, right, the better we get at it.
Exactly.
I have one more question that I'm going to throw up, because I'm so excited, both that it came from someone listening on Facebook, but also that it's coming from Sarah Isaac on Facebook, who Sarah gave one of our previous webinars as well around marketing for social change. So I want to read the question to you. It says, to what extent do you think women's abilities and instincts to manage not only their own emotions, but also the emotions of those around them, let men, quote, off the hook for doing their own emotional work, and consequently sidetracking women's energies? So it's a complex question, but I hope you might follow that and have a thought in our last few minutes.
Amie, I can see you want to speak.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where to start. First, I want to start with like a high five to Sarah, because that is such an astute observation and such a fantastic question. It does depend. We can't paint all women with the same brush to think that we are sensitive to that, or that we do that kind of work, or that's a skill that we possess. But for women who do have that higher emotional intelligence, and who are trying to make sure everyone is included, and really creating an atmosphere of inclusion, I think that's a really interesting point that's raised of, if we are or aren't. We sometimes, I've seen many women, and I've been guilty of this over the years, is I think we even we do damage to ourselves by, as we introduce an idea, a thought, a contribution, we soften it. We almost put all the qualifiers in front of it before the brilliance of our thought is shared. So we do ourselves a disservice. It's almost like we try to get out ahead of it so nobody else does it to us sometimes. And again, I've seen this over and over again. And maybe that's because we are coming in with an assumption about how other people in the room will react, rather than building, to your point, through practice, through sheer experience, building the confidence to know, I'm going to put my statement out there as is, whole, on its own 2 feet. And they'll have to do the emotional and mental work of reacting to it. Now, I have to be prepared to manage in response in that constructive, respectful way. But I think it's a really, really interesting question that's asked. Great point.
Alex, anything you'd add to that?
I think Amie said it so perfectly. A great question. One that I think would take us longer than these couple minutes to really reflect on and try to kind of collaborate on. But I think that emotional intelligence is something that is so important. It's a skill that we all need to continue working on, and making sure that we hold everyone accountable. everyone should have a higher level of emotional intelligence just because you're in the workplace, because it's a place where you are expected to lead, to work, to collaborate, to partner. But I do believe that, as Amie, I love what Amie said, you have to make sure that you are presenting your ideas in a firm and assertive way, regardless of what the response will be. Don't soften it. Make sure that through emotional intelligence, you're ready for whatever the response is, but at least you put it out there, right? Which is what we always want to make sure that women go for it with ideas, with positions, with roles, to continue to do that. So this is a great example.
Great, excellent. Only for time am I going to have to draw this to an end. We're a minute or two over already, but one of the things that we like to do in creating our relationships and our network, of course, is to ask you to stay in touch with us at the Global Links Initiative. So I'm going to ask Yasmin or Aaliyah to put into the chat box so that you can follow us, and be sure to befriend each other. And the other thing we do is we like to take a photo of everyone who's online and who has joined us. So if you're able to come on screen and you would like to share your photo, we encourage you to do that now. We also like to remind people that it will appear on Facebook. So if you don't like your image and your name to be on the screen at the same time, now is the time to change your name on your screen. But please do follow us. And then Leah, I think you're going to take our screenshot. So whenever you can see folks coming on, so give them a second. And then whenever you're ready, just let us know and we'll put on our big smiles.
Okay. I'll give it like 10 more seconds and then I'll give a countdown and everyone smile.
All right.
So 3, 2, hold on, someone's photo is loading in. All right. Sorry about that. 3, 2, 1.
Excellent. Thank you, Leah. Please, everyone, join me in saying thank you so much to Cari, to Amie, to Alex. You can see why I was excited about this webinar. Please stay in touch with these incredible leaders. And I also want to say that this for the summer is our last webinar so far, right? So we'll be back in August, don't worry, but I think this was such a wonderful way to wrap up our season of webinars. And I remind anyone who's missed this webinar or any of our previous webinars, you can see it on our Facebook page, the Global Links Initiative Facebook page, or on our YouTube channel. And of course, anyone who's listening, if you would like to, if you have an idea for a webinar, like something you want us to talk about, or if you yourself want to join a webinar, please, we are so open because you see we have fabulous leaders in our communities here locally in the Winter Park, Orlando area, in Brazil, and in India, and in Iraq. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for giving us your time. Cari, Amie, Alex, thank you very much for your leadership and for giving your time and energy to the Global Links Initiative and our team.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.